Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh with MitsuTimes. Today, my guest is Mr. Matt Franks. I don't know, what are you still going to stay stock appearing, Matt?
This year, yep.
I was going to say the stock appearing king. You know, it feels like everybody's moving on, but Matt's like, no, I'm staying here and stock appearing, and I'm going to fight it out with Ruben and whoever else that tries to show up new.
Yeah, man, it's a cool class. I kind of went backwards to go forwards in this car. So yeah, man, I had eight, I think about. It was 2 or 3 transmissions last year. So I finally got a good transmission and car and decided I'll just stay stock appearing, man, after all the costs that, were involved doing the transmission.
For sure. Yeah. I think 2023 was a bad year for transmissions.
Yeah, it was real bad.
But, like you said, sometimes you got to go backwards to go forwards. And I feel like a lot of people are stuck somewhere in between stock appearing and street eliminator, and they don't want to run an index class. I just wish more people would take that. I wouldn't even call it a step back. Just come back to, a stock frame turbo and have fun there for a while, and then, save up your money and buy that big turbo that puts you up in Street 32 or whatever like that.
Yeah, I agree, man. I don't know what it is. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are in the index class. Index racing isn't bad. I raced it on smaller stock frame turbos at events, but I think, once you get up to the, FP Black, FP0 setups, you should take a stab at stock appearing or, street eliminator class for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, we know a lot of cars out there on 6266. I mean, the Zero is damn near a parallel to that. So just, switch over to a Zero, sell your 6266 or 6262, whatever you got, get a stock manifold, and have some fun in stock appearing for a while.
Yeah, no, I agree. Before this year, I actually had a ported stock exhaust manifold and, ran 970s last year on it. And, same ported stock intake manifold, throttle body. And, there's nothing wrong with that setup at all. I mean, you can definitely maximize on it.
Yeah.
With that turbo.
Have a lot of fun and race in your IFOs and other stuff like that you want to, don't be tied down to the shootout classes. It happens once a year. Right.
No, I agree. I mean, I think the like import face-off and everything, I think you're limited to like a 64 mil turbo and in the class that we run, FIS. And so, I mean, a Zero, will compete right up there with those guys.
Yeah.
So.
And you ain't got to get a fancy exhaust manifold or
no
all that kind of stuff.
No, you really don't.
And I think, Matt, you could speak on this better than most. I think a lot of people, think that they need the latest and greatest in intake manifolds, and especially when it comes to running the Zero or the black or the green or the red or whatever, the stock manifold is actually really, really, really good.
Oh, it is. Back in the day, if you've been in the Evo community for a while, Busher Racing for sure was one of the, he always, posted the results Dave did of the stock port intake manifold. And it's a great setup, man. 65 mil ported throttle body with, or 64 with a ported stock intake manifold. There's nothing wrong with that setup. I mean, it's a solid setup up to at least 800 horsepower for sure.
Yeah.
So.
And I think we're still, once you get there, you're still in the fun, but also not so costly zone. And that's where a lot of Evo people want to be, especially considering the upfront cost to own an Evo in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Well, they're not getting any cheaper.
That's for sure.
And if you find a cheap one, it's usually beat up.
It's cheap for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Matt, let's talk about the setup on your beautiful all black Evo.
Yeah, man, it's a built long block. I'm running STM short block. Um, Man, I've put a beating on that thing with the setup, and I've had zero issues with the STM built short block. Big shout out to Brian Gleason at STM. He's always taking care of me, man, when it comes to purchasing any parts from those guys. And it's got a billet crank, aluminum rods, forged pistons, and then I got a Head Games CNC ported cylinder head with S3 cams, and then the ported intake manifold and throttle body, running ID 2600 cc injectors, of course FP0 turbo, and this year I stole Jeremy's Toxic Fab tubular manifold. So I'm running that in my car since he's moving up. And and then, of course, the rest of the supporting mods. I'm running a a different transmission, or I should say a built transmission from a company that a lot of people haven't heard of. I kind of saw a squirrel posted for sale, and I was like, hey, you know what? That's a good deal. And bought it. And it's built by a company called ZF Design. They're big in the Subaru community.
Oh, okay.
But so anyway, it's been great. That's what I've been running this year. And then of course Shep built transfer case and rear diff. And then let's see, we have a drive shaft shop, carbon fiber drive shaft. Big shout out to Lee that runs Drive Shaft Shop. They're only about an hour and 20 minutes from me, so I went up there and just personally talked to the guys. And Lee gave me a tour of the shop, and then gave me a killer deal on that. So
heck yeah,
yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much the setup, man. And then of course the shifter. I'm running the ILR shifter that everybody knows Hoy Train makes. And then the, I got a STM stage and brake kit, mini brake kit, and then RPF ones with DR2 drag radials. But yeah, that's about it.
Heck yeah. Serious setup.
Yeah. It's, everything on this car, we learned from Jeremy's FP0 setup over the past 10 years or more. So, I tuned his car, and, we learned a lot, swapping parts out and picking and choosing. So the part selection, everything was, very thought out whenever I started putting the car together with this setup. So, yeah, man, it's ran great. Once I got the drivetrain, holding together, it's been running great this year.
Heck yeah. Well, speaking of Jeremy, we heard his story on the podcast about how he had a 2G and you had an Evo, and kind of motivated him to get an Evo. So I want to talk about why you got an Evo in the first place.
Honestly, man, I just kind of, so growing up back home, everybody was big Ford V8 Camaro guys. Grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania, and everybody was in the V8s, and I was always looking at the GTRs. Whenever I was a kid, I always liked the import stuff, Mazda RX-7s, and so I was kind of a Mazda guy, to be honest. Growing up, I was always wanting an RX-7, and then as I got older, you start reading about things, and I'm like, I don't know, the rotary block. I'm like, and then started looking, at the Evos, and saw they were coming to the States in 2003. And at the time, I had my first turbo car. I had an SRT4 in 2004.
Nice.
And so I was like, you know, the Evos were already there, but you never buy the first year model, right? You always kind of wait to the second or third.
Let them work the
And
bugs out.
yeah, so then I had the SRT4. That was a fun car. And then local dealership in Fayetteville, whenever I was at Fort Bragg, they got their first '05 with the Sunsound leather, and it was black. And I was like, you know what? That's the car I want. So traded SRT4 in, got the '05 Evo 8, and yeah, man, it's I wanted it more so for the all-wheel drive, you know.
Oh yeah.
And the 4G63 had been around forever, and you know, they can take a lot of power, as everybody knows, for what they are. And so easy to do, you know, bolt-ons inside the engine bay, install a set of cams, swap out the turbo, everything's right there. So I was like, yeah, you know, this is definitely what I want. And then went all-wheel drive and never looked back.
It's tough to go back from there, especially once you've had a little taste.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you bought this car from a dealership in Fayetteville. What was it like when you bought it? Pretty much just bone stock?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was bone stock. You know, the '05 was the first year of the ACD. So, you know, I mean, and '05 had a little bit bigger turbo than the '03, '04s. Had the 10.5 hot side instead of the 9.8. But yeah, just, you know, had fun with it, stock, you know, and it wasn't stock long, I think 1,500 miles. You know, I you know, already started putting stuff in it. But, yep.
And so coming from the SRT4 and now, you know, getting to experience this Evo, did you have any goals in mind? Had you raced the SRT4 at all, even out on the street, and kind of knew where you wanted or where you had hoped the Evo would be?
Yeah. So the SRT4, you know, I had the turbo toys from Mopar, the Stage 2 with turbo toys, which had the dial boost, the race gas switch, and then I think there was something else, man. I think it was the intercooler sprayer.
Yeah.
And then I had PT Steely's, you know, with the M&H drag radials for it. And, you know, it was a high 12-second car. You know, nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you know, I had a guy that I worked with that had the '03 Evo. It was blue. And, you know, we were seeing what he was doing with that car. And, you know, he was, you know, beating up on me whenever we go to the track with the SRT4. You know, it was like I was running 12.9. He was like 12.6, you know, 12.7 in the quarter. And just like, man, you know what? I need to switch over, you know?
Yeah.
So.
God bless Fayetteville Motorsports Park. That's where a lot of hopes and dreams are dashed.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we it was a different time back then, you know. Everybody was, I mean, there was always huge gatherings out there at Fayetteville Motorsports Park. They always had, you know, Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
And man, it'd be packed. You'd be lucky to get, you know, 2-3 passes in that night. But yeah, everybody was in other cars. It was a good scene back then. And, you know, '03 to, I'd say probably to about 2008, you know, kind of started to slow down after that.
That's right when I got there.
Yeah.
When I got there, they were doing meets at the Fayetteville Hooters, and there was all kinds of Evos, Subarus, and stuff. And I'm like, man, this is a whole different culture down here.
Yeah, man, it was real big. You know, street racing was big there too. You know, before Mexico was Mexico, and yeah, it was a huge car scene. Everybody meet up at Hooters or the Home Depot parking lot, Target parking lot there, you know, off of Skybo Road.
Yep.
The old Kmart. I mean, hell, Kmart's not even around, I don't think, anymore. But yeah, it was a big scene.
Yep. Even some would say the Normandy DZ out there was a little bit Mexico.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that area was a big one. Actually, the guys actually grew up here that I met, along the way. They said, man, that was huge out there, back in the day, out there racing. But back in it was like the 80s, 90s.
But I mean, even when I was there, like I feel like I learned so much about cars and the car culture and all that stuff just in that short amount of time.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a mix, what they call a melting pot, man. You got your V8 crowd, you got your import crowd, then you got your stereo crowd, which is completely different.
Yeah.
Everybody, was taking their stuff to like Rudy's and other audio shops there to, get their big sound systems. And yeah, it was definitely a different, nothing I'd ever seen, being from up north. But
So earlier you talked about taking a step back towards the stock appearing. So I want to talk about what the different setups that you had on this car and what really worked out for you that you liked, so that somebody out there listening, they're thinking about switching to a different setup. Maybe you can give them some inspiration for their build.
so the going backwards, the going forwards thing kind of comes from my first Evo was an '05, and I went into an Evo 9 turbo, then I jumped straight to an FP Black. I think Jeremy said he remembered me having a red, but I actually went straight to an FP Black. And man, I love that setup. I mean, on pump gas, 500 horsepower with cams.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great setup. And then, I went to a Buescher FS 635 turbo kit. And I was like, this isn't bad, but it didn't have that punch,
Yeah.
like the stock frame turbos. So anyway, I had that set up. And then because of, being in the military, deploying, things like that, I had a parachute malfunction while I was, in jump master school. And so I was having cortisone shots and still going on deployments after that. Well, then a buddy and I, we wanted to try out for another unit on Fort Bragg, and we went running with our rucksacks. And, the next morning I couldn't get out of bed. And my ex told me, she was like, hey, you need to go to the doc because, I hate going to the doc. And I'm like, yeah, I think you're right. So my parachute malfunction happened in 2006 on my last jump in jump master school. So I graduated, but I hit like a bag of shit, or rocks, sorry. And so I went to the doc and they're like, hey man, like these cortisone shots are just masking all this stuff. Like you're non-deployable. And I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? Right. Like all I'm used to doing is deploying.
Right.
So I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to start a shop. So, I registered a business name, everything. And so while I was active duty going through my hip surgeries, I was just doing Evos on the side. And that's when Jeremy would come over, he moved into the neighborhood and helped me do clutch installs, things like that. I'd street tune the cars. That all spiraled out of control and ended up getting a shop down the road. And once I had the shop, kind of fast forward into what I was talking about earlier, I was like, man, I really want to go back to a stock frame turbo and maximize that. And the guys at the shop are like, man, we're a shop. Like, you need to go big. And I'm like, I don't really care to go, to a bigger turbo setup right now. I kind of want to maximize each one, and so anyway, that's what we did. We ended up putting, a bigger turbo setup in the car, gutting it, put a cage in it, and I hated it. I hated the car. And it was one of those things where I felt like, kind of put the cart before the horse.
Oh, yeah.
We went from an FP Black to a 635 and then straight to an HTA 99 setup. And the car did great numbers on the dyno, but, I wasn't getting out of the hole right, coming off the line. My skill set as a driver was way behind, and, I just wasn't doing it justice. So anyway, that's kind of maybe a long story long, but kind of short. So anyway, I went through a divorce, liquidated everything with the shop, took a long pause, and was still helping out Jeremy with his car while I was going through all that. And then got remarried, and my wife was like, hey, she's like, I can tell you're wanting to get into another car again. She's like, why don't you go look for another Evo? And I'm like, she's like, you're always down there, tuning Jeremy's and still involved with, tuning cars, on the side here, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I reached out to a friend that, we had worked on his car. And I said, hey, if you ever want to sell that car, let me know. So he did. He reached out. We worked a deal, and now I have that car.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so now got this car, and it had a Evo 9 turbo set up in it, and had a small cam like a BC 264, and and still, stop block, had like 99,000 miles on it, and I was like, hey, now with this car, I'm gonna go from an Evo 9 to an FV green. Then from an FV green, I went to an FV red. And from the red, I went to an AGT, a 62 that I had in there. Yeah. And then after that, I went to the 0. So, kind of went backwards, like I said, to go forwards. Mm. And I was just kind of maximizing what I could on those setups.
Kind of experienced everything.
Yeah. So yeah, man, it's been refreshing to go backwards, to go forwards. Again, it's just tightening up, the skill set, everything from suspension to tuning to driving, and I feel like I'm starting to build, on all the things like I wanted to again.
Yeah.
So
good.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a fresh start.
Yeah, man. It's all worked out great.
So you think, Matt, looking back on it, going through that whole process, you would still, grab up that Evo and get where you are now the same way? Or is there, part that you would jump over or skip or go back and redo?
No, man, on this car, like you said, a fresh start, I do it exactly the same.
Good deal.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Matt, I mean, I think back to, I believe, 2 shootouts ago, or maybe even the last shootout, when it was you and Ruben up at the line, and I think you got the red light. And it just felt so heartbreaking because, I mean, it was really yours to win. And, for me and for other people listening, maybe that's like, man, how does Matt stay motivated to keep pushing this car? So that's exactly what I want to find out. Like, what is it about this car that makes you, have those real bad lows, or maybe not real bad lows, but have those low points and still get back in the car and, taking rounds again?
Yeah, well, that's part of the going backwards to go forwards, right?
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, that's driver.
Just part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it, man. And I'll be the first to admit I'm not a great driver. Have I gotten a lot better with this car? Going forward, absolutely. But it's the the RTs on the light and everything I've been trying to get better at. And at the shootout, man, to be honest with you, that when I red lit against Ruben, at the light, there was things that got, while we were staging that threw me off. I had already got on the double bulb first,
mm-hmm.
and Ruben actually bumped in, and then his second light went back off. So when I saw it come on, I got on the two-step, and his bulb shut off. And I was like, shit. So then, I look over. Well, then he bumped in, and I'd already started to let the car creep a little bit, like you would when the second bulb hits, stage a little deeper. And I was already right there. I'd already slipped the clutch a little too much. And when I went to do it, when he got on the bulb again, it, red lit.
Yeah.
So
no going back after that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's the things you need to be ready for. No matter, again, completely my fault. But, things happen like that, and, it is what it is. But
it's a good learning experience.
Yeah, for sure.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Exigent Solutions. Exigent Solutions provides custom tools, parts, and accessories for the motorsports industry. Based in Cincinnati, Ohio, their services include CNC machining, mechanical design, rapid prototyping, and engine assembly. They are best known for their record-setting 4B11 builds. They have the parts and expertise to get your car up our list. Check out all their products and services at exigent-solutions.com. So, Matt, I want to go back in time a little bit and talk about when this car broke into the nines for the first time. What was the setup on it?
It was actually last year at the shootout when it broke into the nines. It was pretty much the same setup that I have this year, minus transmission and exhaust manifold.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I had an ultimate ratio transmission in it, and it had the stock ported exhaust manifold, and the car was heavier too. But yeah, we broke into the nines last year, and the car just kept getting faster, as I adjusted the tune and kept dialing it in, and hit a personal best. I think I ran a 974, up there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's when I broke into the nines, was last year at the shootout.
And then you went to Rockingham later on that season and got the 9.4?
No. That was I went to Darlington.
Oh, okay.
And first fast off trailer ran a 971, so a little faster. And then the second pass, I turned the wick up, because it actually ran faster with 3 pounds of boost at Darlington.
Huh.
3 pounds of boost less. And I was like, man, okay, well, let me turn it back up. And the car did like a bunny hop off the line. It dead hooked the tire, and it shredded the T-case.
Oof.
And hurt the transmission. So then I was down last year. I said, you know what? This is the second trans this year. You know what? I'm just taking a break. I need, and then finally got the dial box I was talking about earlier, and then went out this year. And yeah, we were at Rockingham at Test and Tune, and ran a 9.4. Yeah, 9.47. Yeah.
So that was this year.
Yeah.
I feel like the last couple of years just been a blur.
Yeah. Yeah, man. They come and go quick.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. How did that 9.4 feel? I mean, especially after, getting that 9 earlier, I guess the year before, that 9.4 must have felt like you were really moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And, the great part about that is we just, we ran out of time that day, and it got really cold that night as well. And, so the the traction kind of went to crap. I ran like a 970 after that. But, I was looking at the logs, and I was like, man, we still have more, in this car. And I got a couple more things to install in the car that it's going to pick up quite a bit. So.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. So Matt, what's the goals for 2024? I mean, I know, you got some races that you plan to go to. So what is it? And you talked about maybe moving up to a different turbo setup next year. So what this year's got to be full of goals, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the goals this year, um, we, we want to reset the stock appearing record, which Jeremy set. I think, what is it, 300 or 400 off from that.
Yep.
Um,
400s.
yeah, yeah. I think he ran a 943 and I'm at like a 947.
Yep.
Um, so, the goal is to set that, reset that record and then, of course, do as much competing as as we can this year. I just had hip replacement. So, I'm down here for at least 6 to 8 weeks. And then, next event we're gonna take the car to streetcar takeover, and then want to compete in that. Try to win some other events. We're talking about FL2K in the fall.
Yeah.
Of course, a shootout, and yeah, man, just race as much as possible, and of course, another goal is to get the car in the eights. So with the zero setup.
That'd be sick.
Yeah, so it's I believe the car has it in it. It's up to me, driver. But yeah, I think as we keep turning it up and add these last couple things that we want to add to the car, man, it's we all think it definitely has it in it. So shoot for that 8 second, and yeah, of course, try to win the shootout. The other thing I'm looking at doing is putting a car in 2 classes at the shootout.
No.
Stock appearing and street eliminator. So kind of want to, test my driver skill set and of course, the tuning.
Right.
I mean, that's if we can do well in two classes with the car, man, I think that speaks for itself.
For sure.
So yeah, so that's another goal for this year.
Well, Matt, you talked about, what there might be a different setup coming into 2025. So let's talk about what the future for this car holds.
Yeah, man. I'll be honest with you. I looked at taking this car to like a 64, 66, 64, 70 size turbo, was the most I ever really looked at taking it. But of course, we all say that and then take it further. But the guys on the team are, we got Brandon and Jeremy looking to do import versus domestic this year.
Yep.
And I don't know, man. Maybe I'll get the bug and maybe, push the car for that next year. We'll see.
I hope so, man. I really do think that's, obviously it's the pinnacle for racing of our time, right? So I really feel like it should be everybody's goal to get in there, but I know obviously it's not a easy, to even qualify, to even be able to race at those levels. So I understand why it's not everybody's goal, but yeah, I love the fact that more and more people are looking at, making it to World Cup.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll be honest with you, man, I've never even been to it yet. So this will actually be my first year, with wife and kids, and it's always been tough to kind of get up there.
For sure.
And but we're definitely gonna get it figured out to go up this year, man. But yeah, I love watching, guys from English racing up there. You got Lucas and Miles that run, Booston goes up there, Devin and Flesher. And I mean, there's just a lot of guys up there in our community, man, that show up and put on a good show for everybody.
Yeah.
And, we want to add to that. So for sure.
It's man, it's a crazy place to be. And I feel like it's one of those. I don't get to go to very many big events through the year, really, because, I don't go to Texas 2K because there might be one or two Mitsubishis there. I'm going to go to FL 2K because it sounds like everybody's going to go this year, but I know a couple of years ago I went. It was like when the hurricane had taken out Bradenton and they moved it to Gainesville, and it was kind of, I guess they didn't have full capacity like they wanted. And when I go to World Cup, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what like a huge event is. Wow, this is a totally different thing to what I'm used to with the shootout or whatever.
Right.
So even if you don't plan to race, that's a good point. Maybe everybody just needs to come out and see how it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's of course we got Spec Ops race team, man, and Brandon and Jeremy are stepping up, to show up there this year, and I'm pretty excited about it. And like I said, maybe I'll catch the bug and then I'm upgrading next year for sure.
Yeah.
Whether it's for a street eliminator or street 32, not sure yet, but yeah. And then if everything works out, like I said, might just start getting cars set up for import versus domestic next year, and then we'll have 3 cars going. So
man, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So Matt, obviously you've been doing this for a real long time, and even as a shop owner, you've probably seen more than a fair share, more than most people of people buying an Evo or and going in the wrong direction with it. So I want to talk about someone out there is listening. They bought an Evo. Maybe it's close to stock. I don't know if there's any even left anymore, but it's close to stock, and they just want to go quicker without ruining their reliability. What is your advice for them to make their build as successful as possible without spending a ton of money?
I mean, a big one is do your research. Look at the guys that have had success. There's a lot of good shops out there, and then there's a lot of bad ones too.
Yeah.
There's people that will say, I can get you this, and this, but, there's no results for anything that, they talk about. And, so, I mean, look at the shops in your area, man, and then, take heed to their advice, listen to them. If you don't want to spend a lot of money, then pick the parts that you don't have to spend a lot of money on, where quality probably isn't, a big deal. Meaning like, say, a catback exhaust system, something like that. But, I always tell everybody, man, cheap parts, nets you cheap results.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I've always been a big advocate of, buy high quality injectors. There's people out there, well, I can get this set for, $400 versus this company that charges, $700. I'm like, yeah, well, if you want to run E85, that company you're buying for $400, you're going to have a clogged injector soon, there's parts you can go cheaper on, and there's ones you can't, but, I always say, use quality parts in your car, and, you'll get good results.
Good deal. And I think like you're saying, we see a lot of times people like, well, I'm just going to buy the cheapest everything and I'll still get the same results I'm looking for, and then their car's on jack stands for an extended period of time.
Right. No, you're right, man. And and a lot of them don't learn. They keep repeating the same thing,
I'm sure you've seen a lot of customers like that.
Yeah, there's some people you can help and some you can't,
Yep. Well, good deal. So Matt, you talked about it a little bit, but I want to go in detail about the events that we can go and see this car in action in 2024.
Yeah, so the next event coming up will be Streetcar Takeover, June 22nd, out in Charlotte at ZMAX. That'll be the next event I'll be taking it to. After that, there's really nothing until the shootout. So we'll be just doing, test and tune and, getting the rest of the cars dialed in. But, so yeah, June 22nd, and then the shootout in September, and FL2K, can't remember the exact date, will be
October 3rd through the 6th.
Yeah, I was going to say October, beginning of October, taking it down there. And then, that'll be pretty much, the bigger events that we take it to for the rest of the year. But yeah, biggest one being the shootout. So like I said, I'm going to have it in 2 classes and we'll see how it does.
We want to see lots of Subies come out this year and take on the stock appearing guys. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, about that. I don't know where that's going to go. I would. I love the Subarus. That I know a couple guys that they're waiting for the rules to come out.
Yeah.
Still on the stock appearing rules for the Subaru. So once those come out, they'll be getting their setup. So I know there's going to be at least 2 that are going to show up, but I don't know about the rest of the community.
Yeah.
So.
It's one of those things where, we're behind the ball. These rules should have been out a long time ago. Yeah,
I agree, man. I spoke, to someone there, and we had a good discussion about the stock appearing class, but there's been no continuing conversation about the Subaru stuff, and I mean, the guys are just kind of sitting out there flapping, and what is it? We're about to be May.
Yep.
So, I mean, you're right. I mean, they need to get on it, and that way these guys can have a clear distinction of what the rules are and start getting a car set up.
Yep. Especially, I know the big debate was rotated turbocharger assembly. So, yeah,
right.
That's something that if you got to purchase a new turbo, you'd like to know as quickly as you can.
Right. And, the reason for that, talking to, a couple of them is, the FP0s, they're, to be honest, I don't even think they're making them anymore. Or, maybe they will by request, but, they sit in the back there, and the standard location, there's not a lot of room. Mm-hmm. So they're looking for that rotated setup to give that setup more room in the back. Which honestly, I don't see what the problem would be with it,
Yeah.
As long as they're not, putting them in the front, totally relocate. If it's in the back,
Yeah.
I get it, but yeah.
It'd be different if it was forward facing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Matt, I know you're not really a man of social media much, but I want to talk about where people can find and follow you and keep up with your car and what you plan to do with it, not only stock appearing wise, but into next year.
Yeah, so I'm not a big social media guy. Interviews aren't really what I do a lot of either, to be honest. But, I love the community, man, and what you and Dan are doing. So you pulled me out of my comfort zone, and I appreciate that. But
absolutely. I appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah. And, but yeah, man, as far as social media, Matt Franks on Facebook, and we have a Spec Ops Race Team Facebook page, to where, you can find things that, we got going on, which we have to do a better job at posting. But yeah, Spec Ops Race Team Facebook page, and, the my Facebook page.
Yeah.
So send me a friend request, and that's pretty much all I do on mine is send updates for the car or post updates, and that's about it.
Need to go make sure everybody goes and likes the Spec Ops Race Team Facebook page so you can see Brandon Mal's crazy new wrap.
Oh yeah, man. it looks amazing. I'll be honest, we were like, when he was talking about it and he showed us the color, I'm like, oh man, that's loud,
It's PT belt.
Because his car already looked great,
Mm-hmm.
and man, it turned out really nice.
Yeah. I get why I did it though. I mean, there's so many white ones right now at the moment racing. It's tough.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, it's loud and proud, and man, it turned out really good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, awesome. Matt, is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to for, either helping get the car where it is or helping you get where you are?
Yeah, man. Definitely give a shout out to my wife. She supports my need for speed. My adrenaline junkie side, and she doesn't give me too much flack about it. And definitely the wife. Everybody on a race team. Of course, Jeremy Keys. Him and I have been doing the Evo stuff for a long time. So, he's always been my right-hand man whenever we, need to fabricate something or tear the car apart last minute, get it back together. Of course, the rest of the guys on the Spec Ops race team, we went out, to import face-off this year, and, I was the only car ready to go in that time frame. And, everybody showed up, man, and, it's a great team. It's effortless. When you got a group of guys, on a team that, there's not drama, we can all, talk crap to each other and beat each other up. And, it's effortless whenever, you think about it. I mean, nobody has huge expectations as far as, we all have families. So if we can show up, to help a guy with his car, those guys show up. If not, no big deal. So, big shout out to the race team. And also a big shout out to Robert at FP. He's actually, when I had my shop, we actually did the first R&D on the FP0 on the dyno and installed it. And man, he's always had my back, anything turbo. Shout out to Drive Shaft Shop, to Lee. Hooked me up with the drive shaft this year. And and also Brian Gleason at STM. He's always got me squared away on any parts I need to get from them. And man, that's about it.
Got a big team, a lot of supporters.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate, man. Got some good people on our side.
Well, I'm the type of person where I believe, good people attract good people. So it must say something about you, Matt.
Yeah, man. Thanks. I appreciate that. I don't think everybody would say that, but but yeah, man, I appreciate it. Like I said, we got some good people on our side. So yeah.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and stepping out of your comfort zone and telling the story of your Evo and the plans for it. I think a lot of people are going to really, really like this episode and appreciate hearing, you kind of, outside of the shootout, getting to hear, kind of the backstory of your car. So I really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I appreciate you reaching out and doing this interview. So it's been fun.
Well, thank you. All right, well, get you some rest and recover from that hip surgery so we can get you back out, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.